7:30, it's Monday morning. It's Jaron Owen with you all the way through until 10 a.m. this morning. Normally on the show, this is the bit where I lie and say we're bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, but tonight to this morning, there you go, already screwed up. We're a bit bleary-eyed. I got sucked in, Owen. Instead of just going to bed and realising that the game was up, McIlroy made just enough of a charge to think, okay, well, what if Scheffler goes in the water? I might miss something. So, like, I actually had turned the phone off at one point and left the notifications on, and the phone opened, so therefore the whole room was into brightness as it was like, oh, blah, blah, blah happened. I can't even remember what stage of the evening it was, and then ended up watching pretty much until the end.
A good decision or a bad decision?
I don't know, bad decision. I mean, okay, so I saw the bunker shot, which was great, and Rory's excitement, and that's good, but like it wasn't close. We lulled ourselves into this weird sense that this is somehow close when it wasn't.
No, and Cameron Smith did exactly what everybody wanted Scotty Scheffler to do, and unfortunately the most hated man in the world last night, Scotty Scheffler, went and played good golf and held his nerve after an early wobble. I think it's fair to say. I think that was the chance, that was the opportunity for drama to happen, was the third hole. If he had run past the flag there,
yeah.
The Sky commentary were pretty convinced that it was an exceptional shot and it was going to stop a couple of feet after the hole, and they'd obviously know better than most people, so that was probably going to be the truth. But I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure if that doesn't go in. It's a straightforward putt for Scheffler. So I think that looking out there, and he deserved his luck for sure, just got him back onto an even keel, because those first couple of holes were definitely shaky.
And even in the aftermath, in the post-round interview, McIlroy pointed out that his driving disintegrated over the last 5 or 6 holes, and like the birdie on 18 isn't a fluke, but it's a fluke. You know, it's a get out of jail birdie to add a tiny little bit of pressure, and Scheffler missed the birdie putt on around about the same time, or was that one of his few bogeys in the back line? I can't even remember. It has definitely all blended.
No, the birdie putt around that time, yeah. He misses, yeah.
But it wasn't enough. Like he, you know, as McIlroy said, it's his best ever round. It was one shot off the course record. He needed to set a new course record to put the pressure properly on Scheffler, but that 3-stroke cushion was always going to be enough for the world number one, who was playing amazing golf all week.
Yeah, dominant. It was only ever going to be Cameron Smith if it wasn't going to be Scotty Scheffler, really. And like McIlroy did exactly what he needed to do on the final day, but unfortunately just hadn't enough done on the first couple of days. So it was always going to be a head-to-head, and I think that once Scheffler saw Smith hit the water on 12, I think that was it. That was certainly game over in his view. Although there was clearly still nerves there. I mean, his inability to get the ball in the hole on 18 was pretty funny. It took him 3 putts, and he eventually was a double bogey the 18th in the end. So there was definitely, like he said it afterwards, that he was in tears the morning of his final round. He said he was really, really struggling to handle the nerves of the final round, and you know, even his wife was saying stuff like, I mean, if you don't win, you know, I'm still going to love you. It's all going to be fine if you don't win. As she was making breakfast on Sunday by all accounts. So he kind of opened up on that yesterday, but outside of that, his public pronouncements and all that were very refined and very put together over the few days, especially on Saturday after he was interviewed, knowing that he'd be sleeping on a massive lead going into the final round at Augusta. He was asked, you know, are you going to think about the green jacket? And he was like, yeah, not really. And there was a very kind of chilled out, relaxed version of Scheffler that he put out there. But as we now know, it was exactly the opposite, and I think it's the same for most people who are going after their first title at Augusta.
Yeah, and like, look, he is obviously an incredible golfer, and that's going to be one of those stories. Larry, if he hadn't had his triple bogey, we might have seen a bit more of him. There's people in our Twitter feed complaining about how few shots of his on the final round we saw, and there was definitely a 5 or 6 hole gap almost in the immediate aftermath of the triple bogey, where it was like, well, there's no point in showing him anymore, and then he ends up finishing third, which is a remarkable, excellent performance. But he will be very disappointed that Saturday went the way it did, because he must be feeling that there was another 5 or 6 shots out there for him.
Yeah, and he would have been in a great position if he had, you know, been maybe one back behind Smith going into the final day, so that he wasn't in that final group, and that, you know, I guess Scheffler would have had an eye on him going forward. That's exactly what you want to be when you're chasing, but he'd have left himself just a little bit too much to do on the final day. Like, it's hard to know what would have happened if he didn't have that triple bogey early on. Would he have still finished in excellent fashion? Kind of felt like he was playing angry golf at the end, and it worked for him. And it's like, I mean, we can't deny the fact that this was an excellent Irish tint on this Masters leaderboard with a second and third place. at the Masters. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah, we're a bit blasé about it, aren't we?
Like, yeah, we definitely take this sort of stuff for granted. And like, I mean, there were like Larry in particular was excellent throughout the week, and I think a lot of people have said, and I know John in his virtual insanity picks last week always makes the point that Augusta's kind of suited to Larry, and he hasn't played it enough times for him to be haunted by the things that have gone wrong for him at the course. But what will happen is that today will go down probably or this week will go down as a really positive experience, and that's the sort of bedrock of confidence that maybe means that you're looking at Larry as a contender next year.
All right. Did you watch everything else over the weekend?
Yeah, basically, yeah, from Connacht Leinster on Friday to the jumble of stuff on Saturday and yesterday. Really, a lot of dual screening going on.
Kind of forgotten Saturday. What happened Saturday?
I suppose you had Ulster 2 lose on
yeah.
Saturday. You had Manchester United against Everton. You had Munster against Exeter. You had the Masters, obviously, on Saturday. Arsenal on Saturday.
How much of the Arsenal-Brighton game did you watch?
A good bit, to be fair.
You called it the slow car crash, the fast car crash. Turns out it was
Not surprising.
It was a blowout back tyre on the Autobahn.
Yeah, they've kind of like regressed massively, and like nobody could foresee the injuries that they would have, except maybe Kieran Tierney because he's quite injury prone. But nobody could have foreseen the full extent of what it would have done. And like, I mean, they have but as a result of 2 injuries, their entire midfield has been completely wiped out. And once you lose your midfield, you're screwed. And Tottenham Hotspur, turns out, are very, very good, and they were always going to keep the pressure on. And maybe anyway, even if Arsenal had everybody fit, they would have got into that North London derby on the last Thursday of the season, the third last game or whatever it is, and got beaten anyway. Turns out that game is actually not going to matter anymore, which is disappointing. Unless Arsenal win every game between now and then and Spurs drop a few points, which isn't beyond the bounds of possibility because they do have to play Liverpool.
No, and I don't know, I was searching when the news came through about Matt Doherty and his injury and him being out for the rest of the season. I was searching on Twitter for him and found a Spurs equivalent of Arsenal Fan TV, and they had christened him Diego Doherty.
I like it.
I mean, I was like, we never thought of this.
Yeah.
But they were, and there was like a little bit of pushback. It was like, no, I'm not having it. It's like, and then his stats since Conte has put him in the team were off the charts. Like the most creative, most goal involvements of any. I think Trent was ahead of him as a right back, but everybody else wasn't. Nobody else was ahead of him. So Diego Doherty, we salute you on your recovery this season, and we wish you the very best and a very speedy recovery, and we hope that you get back to the form that you're in, because there's a 3 or 4 years at the top level of the Premier League ahead of him if he can just get back fit. Get more details on that injury for you a little bit later on in the show. But 7:38 this morning, OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs. For an effortless finish to your day, here's what's coming up between now and 10 o'clock. Mark Lawrenson at 8:10. Sports pages at 8:30. Ashing O'Reilly's in Sweden for the Republic of Ireland and their qualifier, which is live tomorrow at 5:30. Alan Quinlan's going to join us today 50. Nathan's going to join us at 9:10. We're going to hear from Fiona Hayes about the weekend's rugby around about 9:30 as well. But at 7:38 it's time for the Gillette Labs performance rankings.
You know, that wasn't an All-Ireland winning performance.
Probably should have won the game based on their second half performance.
Is it a step too far to say it was the performance so far of the World Cup? Maybe not.
OTB AM's performance rankings with Gillette.
I'm scratching my head. That performances was just lacked that intensity.
Boom. Right.
We, as ever, on a Monday morning, go through the good, the bad and the grand from the weekend sport. We will start with the bad, as ever, and a couple of football talking points here. We're going with a list of individuals today. We're calling people out, or actually just pointing out how unlucky they've been in certain situations. Not quite sure who's in a worse situation this morning. Matt Doherty, obviously his season's over, but Eric Ten Hag walking in the door at Manchester United mustn't be an overly excited man after what he's seeing at the moment for Manchester United. The result on Saturday, another disaster for United. Didn't really look like they were up for the game whatsoever after what Burnley had done to Everton midweek, and then for that Everton team to turn Manchester United over is humiliating for
Fortress Goodison, Frank Lampard, he's back.
It exists. It's definitely a thing, Fortress Goodison, and also you kind of have to laugh at Burnley getting beaten at the weekend as well, right? On the road, after Sean Dyche was saying these lads won't lay gloving us. They're on the road. They can't do anything on the road. Burnley go on the road last weekend, and they end up getting beaten, which is quite funny. I mean, you got to give...
At Norwich.
Yeah, at Norwich, sorry. That is the key point here. You got to feel a little bit happy for Frank Lampard getting that one back over Sean Dyche. Oh, no, I'm having it.
Yeah, you like Frank Lampard?
No, I like him in this situation. I like Frank Lampard.
You'd pick Lampard over Dyche.
In this week, I think it's pretty funny when people have egg on their face, and even if I love them or hate them.
Right. Well, there was enough egg to go around. I mean, maybe Lampard makes it out now. It looks like he's going to get. Look, this is definitely one of those relegation battles where you can't pencil in points for anybody just yet.
No. So on Ten Hag.
Why is he in the red? Come on, he's got like the best job in the world, right? Antonio Conte has just said this week, it's amazing that we have a week off. Harry Kane is so unbusy, he ends up doing golf commentary for Sky at the Masters last night. He was like a walk-on, late call-up. Come on, you're here, you can come on. What? You're just playing football yesterday against... No game for a week because they're out of everything. We're out of every cup, says Antonio Conte. That's what's important. And that's what's going to be the situation for the new Manchester United manager next year. They're not even going to be good enough to qualify for the European Conference League, which is exactly what you want. If you're coming in, you're like, I've got a week to prepare for every game. I'm going to get knocked out of the League Cup very early. I'm going to throw my hat at the FA Cup and say no thanks in my first season. Bad omen for Dutch managers winning the FA Cup at Manchester United. And I'll have no games except the 30-odd league games, and that's it.
That will be ideal. There's still a chance, obviously, that they qualify for the Conference League or the Europa League if Arsenal and West Ham drop like lead over the next couple of weeks, which isn't beyond the bounds of possibility. But like away from that, I'm talking about Ten Hag looking at what Manchester United has done to managers over the last little while. And I'm not saying the managers are like not guilty or culpable in any failings at the club. I'm just saying name a manager post Alex Ferguson who has come out of Manchester United without their reputation in tatters. Maybe Van Gaal to a point, but his reputation has been diminished rather than being destroyed and being left in tatters. Whereas, like, you look at everybody else and it seems that their stock has plummeted. And Ten Hag knows that, and he's going into this with his eyes wide open. And he looks at a man like Ralph Rangnick, whose stock was pretty high, you'd have to say, last December, and was well thought of. Maybe that doesn't matter. Maybe reputation isn't important. But it definitely feels that the Ralph Rangnick stocks have plummeted over the last little while. And it's hard to even know if he's the guy to blame because so many other managers have come in and failed miserably. On top of that then, like, because we pointed the fingers at managers for so long over the last little while, I think maybe the players and their quality, and I'm talking about them as footballers, not as people, their quality maybe has been glossed over a little bit. Like, you look at the quality of Manchester City against Liverpool yesterday, and you look at, even at their peak, their peak form, how many of these Manchester United players will get in there? I love a combined 11.
None.
The only people that could be on the precipice of making it would be peak Bruno Fernandes.
What position, though? Instead of who?
Well, yeah, none. Well, okay, but that's when we get into that. But like, I'm talking about the quality of the player. He could potentially, at his peak last season, could have made it into one of those teams, and maybe peak Borussia Dortmund, Jadon Sancho. But I think they're both they're both leaps. I'm just saying maybe. But like, the reality is that Manchester City wouldn't look at Manchester United and say, if I got a free transfer, a free 10-year deal on that guy, or a free 2-year deal on that guy, whatever is better, I would take that person. And I think that illustrates the massive problem that Ten Hag has, because the expectation isn't going to dim. Every new manager who's come into Manchester United has got this expectation of, like, we're back.
Well, the expectation has been blown up now by the fact that they are so bad at the moment. As it stands, they wouldn't qualify for the Conference League. They're behind on goal difference, West Ham, but they have a game in hand. So there's a danger they might qualify for it yet.
That would be an absolute nightmare. But then again, like, they have such pride in their academy that letting the kids go out and play every week in the Conference League may not be the worst thing. The Europa League, in a way, might actually be the worst situation, because they're thinking to themselves, we might actually go and win this and try and qualify for the Champions League. With the Conference League, the prize is only to qualify for the Europa League, so there would be no incentive, and you could just play the kids in that, which might be bad. And that is what Ten Hag's job, assuming he is going to be Manchester United manager, by the way, it is going to be that. I just wonder, will he have the ability to be given patience and
did we underrate the job that Solskjaer was doing with this shower?
Yes, 100%. And that's not to say that Solskjaer is a good manager or a great manager or anything like that, but it definitely felt like all of us, I definitely thought that Solskjaer was largely at fault, because I thought that Bruno Fernandes would get into the Manchester City/Liverpool team last season. I thought that maybe a fully firing version of Pogba, if there was like a manager with real credentials, could have been something that Manchester United fans could have seen. Those two players in particular, at their very best, could have brought Manchester United to a better level. But maybe actually we didn't focus enough on the lack of quality in the squad. Like, nobody needs to hear anything more about Harry Maguire or Cristiano Ronaldo, but at both ends of the pitch, they've got just two really, really poor signings at this point, and you've got Ronaldo slapping a phone out of a fan's hand and smashing it on the ground, and there's an investigation into assault right now. It's just everything that could possibly go wrong in the soap opera it's like it's verging on dream team territory, you know.
Yeah, which is actually the time that you want to be coming into a situation like this where expectations are low. You get to say that player, 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 and that player are gone, and anybody you bring in should be better. Now, that isn't always the case. They bought. Remember who was the Southampton midfielder they bought that we'd forgotten about?
Schneiderlin?
Yeah, like they might sign a lot of Schneiderlins again. That's possible. A lot of players who just aren't capable of stepping up and who aren't good enough. So it's not guaranteed that it's going to automatically be better next season, but you would say this is the floor for how bad it can get when the amount of money that they have available to spend on the wage bill is what it is. You should always be able to buy some quality at that level.
You would think so, but then again, like, it felt that Ralph Rangnick was in a similar enough position at the turn of the year when he came in, that, you know, this is a free pass essentially for a manager coming in.
Not a very active transfer window though, right?
Yeah, like, but
because they had decided, I think, really quickly that he wasn't going to be the guy, that this wasn't going to be an opportunity for him, and so they're not quite sure what type of player they're going to buy. Whereas with Ten Hag, you would assume Donny van de Beek gets an opportunity next season to fit into the team and the system, and that he'll have between the summer and Christmas to see if he can make it at Manchester United with a manager who understands what he's actually capable of, or else he comes in and burns him out straight away and it's like, well, I actually know what he's capable of. No thanks, I don't want that. I want better players. So, it's not. I see the point in Ten Hag, and I would have actually said that he's a winner. The further they fall between now and his official arrival, the better it is for him, because he looks better with each passing moment.
Well, like, he will look better at each passing moment once he's in the hot seat and actually manages to get some results. Like, as I say, I think that they've tried a lot of different tactics with the manager and a lot of different types of managers, and they've all failed.
Think of it as the Andy Reid / Wes Hoolahan impact. When you're not playing, you can't do yourself any damage. When you're not managing, you're not at the club, you can't make any decisions just yet. Nothing to do with you. This is not my shit show. This is Ralph Rangnick and the football hierarchy's problem, not mine.
Yeah, potentially, but my point is that he's quite worried. I would suspect, looking at what's happening over the last little while, and right. I just hoping rather than expecting that he'll be given the patience.
James McCullough, what is Owen smoking? McIlroy's in the amber after almost pulling off the greatest comeback since Lazarus, but Munster Rugby are missing after following up a poor performance with another worse one. James McCullough read Munster Rugby 13-man Exeter were disappointed they didn't win by more against Munster in the Champions Cup following their previous week's performance. This was atrocious. We'll get into the details of Munster chapter and verse with Alan Quinlan a little bit later on. But who else have you got in the red?
I'd also like to kind of spread the love between the sports. We've got Robert Balakoon coming your way in the green in the moment, who might have a bit of a Munster segue or two in there. But Matt Doherty's in the red as well. Obviously his season is over. It's probably Ireland that are in the red really as much as anything else, and Tottenham, as you say. Sorry, what was Matt Doherty's nickname again? I've just completely drawn a blank on the
Diego Doherty.
Yes, that was it. Wow. Okay, that was
because when you can't pronounce the name properly, it helps.
It just really does. Yeah. So
Diego Doherty doesn't quite work, does it?
No, he's gone. He's gone. His season's over for Tottenham, and it is a setback for Spurs given the way he's been playing over the last little while. But also, it's going to be a big setback for Stephen Kenny. The Nations League games in June are huge, and I'm not sure. I think that when we get to June and we get to these Nations League games, those people who thought that maybe the referendum on Stephen Kenny was over, I'm not sure could it start bubbling to the fore again, because people will be like, you said you wanted to win the Nations League, or you were going to win the Nations League and now you're not doing it, sort of thing. I just think there's a tiny bit of pressure on these Nations League fixtures, and he'll want everybody available for that. Matt Doherty would be a surprise now at this point, given the severity of the injury, the reported injury, that he's going to make it.
It was literally wall-to-wall quotes about Doherty, certainly in all the Irish media, but all the English media as well. If you were looking, you were finding that people were holding him up as the exemplar of good management from Conte. He had one foot out the door and now he was back in, and they were talking about him starting next season as the first choice right wing back, and that's still possible depending on the severity of the injury. There's a debate about whether or not they're going to let it settle down, or if he's going to have surgery straight away. So if they manage that properly and he's back for the start of next season, I think that would be a good achievement from here.
There were better stories from an Irish perspective over the course of the weekend in football. Just to kind of handpick a couple of them, you should check out Colin Whelan's goal for UCD against Sligo. He's the Ireland under-21 star. Brilliant goal, but also some vintage Joey and Doe commentary in there. The Welcome to Heaven tagline has been given to Colm Whelan at this point. And then Troy Parrott over the water again, just with another goal for MK Dons. Another absolute belter for MK Dons against Wimbledon, no less, at the weekend. A sort of beautiful volley off the outside of the boot, you know, when you're on the wrong side, the Canio style, and you go with the boot closest to the goal and off the inside, kind of as a set play broke down. It was an absolutely sensational finish. It's a 7th goal of the season in League One. Obviously made a good start to life at MK Dons. Things settled down for him a little bit, and then over the last little while, after going 4 months without a goal, he's got 4 goals in his last 6 games. So he's absolutely flying at the moment. They're obviously in the upper echelons of League One. They've got a couple of games in hand. It's going to be tough for them to get automatic promotion, but he'll certainly be a playoff footballer at the end of the season at the very least.
Yeah. Okay.
We move on to the Grand then, the Amber, and I guess it's interesting, the commenter who said there a moment ago, who said that Rory McIlroy, after one of the greatest comebacks of all time, should be in the green. And part of me tends to agree with that, and to kind of like stick on the positive side of Rory and to kick things off on that front. Like, there was a lot of talk last night, that, especially from Butch Harmon, that, you know, Rory is back now. This is the sort of performance that will kind of like relaunch his career a little bit, certainly in the context of majors, and I could be very excited for the USPGA next month, and you might have him down as a potential winner. That remains to be seen. But if he does manage to get over the line, and this is a sort of rocket launcher for him, regardless of whether or not he wins the Masters, you have to say that McIlroy is back in the conversation of being the best golfer of his generation, and beyond being in the conversation of it, because it did feel over the last little while that the narrative around it was that there was a coterie of United States golfers who'd come through that were just better than McIlroy. That McIlroy burst through in the Tiger is injured and now missing phase, and he filled that void brilliantly and was definitely the most talented golfer who came through in those years. But that kind of, as I say, that tranche of Americans were just that little bit better than him, and Rory would struggle to be anywhere near as dominant as he might have looked in the early stages of his career. So he himself, and if we look at the current golfers of his generation, himself and Koepka are on 4 majors at the moment. Jordan Spieth is on 3. DJ and Morikawa are on 2, and then you got Scheffler, Rahm, Bryson and JT on 1. So does McIlroy end up being the most decorated major performer out of that collection of golfers? There's every chance he does, and I think if he does that, he'll have to go down as the best golfer of his generation, which I'm not sure if people were expecting that a couple of years ago. You're
saying that he is going to win more majors?
The evidence of yesterday would suggest that he is, but I'm reluctant to say that he will, because it's not that we've been in this exact place before. Like, I mean, he hasn't shot a 64 on the final day of Augusta National before. Like, he's had very, very good days in the final day of the Masters when he's been out of contention, and that is where he gets brought into closer to red territory here. This idea that, you know, when the pressure is off, Rory McIlroy delivers, especially when it comes to the Masters. And maybe that's the truth. Maybe that is the truth, but it wasn't necessarily a completely pressure-free scenario when things started ratcheting up for him yesterday. Like, I mean, he wasn't in contention, so it's not the pressure that Scheffler was feeling or anything like that, but he does walk away from yesterday now having won 3 of the 4 majors, and in the 4th major, he's come 2nd. So he's right there, and like, I feel that if McIlroy wins one Masters, the whole idea of him being, you know, a final day merchant when there's no pressure on him, that conversation will totally disappear.
Yeah, exactly.
But like, that's just there's no nuance in that conversation whatsoever.
And there can't be, because like the whole point, he's literally at this stage only playing to try and win that Masters in terms of his legacy. It's like, you know, that very short list of career Grand Slam winners, like, he can keep winning. If he was to start winning majors again, I think that would be a massive breakthrough, and it would definitely help him win the Masters if he was to win one of the other ones. But I think that, like, we can't just pencil him in for more success in majors on the back of this. Like, it's hard to, like, it was brilliant to see him, but there was a putt on 9 where it would have been 4 birdies in a row if he got it. Well, he birdied 10, so it would have been his 3rd in a row. That would have absolutely ramped up the pressure, and it just couldn't get to that point where it was turning the screw in the way that, like, Peak Tiger. Would Peak Tiger have won from that situation yesterday?
From McIlroy's starting point?
Yeah.
No.
You don't think that, like, when the charge was on and when there were shots being dropped?
No, there was just too much of a gap. Like, that's where the kind of, like, when there's the no pressure on McIlroy situation does have. I can see why people are making that argument again this morning, because he's having a prayer, and like it did look, you know what, he might do something here, but it was totally based on the presumption or the idea that Scheffler would drop a few shots. Like, that was the whole idea that Rory was putting himself into position to put the scare on Scheffler and for him to come back a little bit. That's all he could have done yesterday. Like, there's no way he could have, like, it wasn't in his hands, and that's why the pressure was off him. So I can see why people are making that argument. I'm not sure if I personally agree with it, but that's why it's there. Like, Tiger could have maybe bested the course record. He could have gone to 63, 62 maybe. Like, is it enough in the end to beat Scotty Scheffler in the end? It's not. So.
Well, it might be, though. That's the thing we don't know. That's the bit where you don't put the pressure on, where it's not like, I need this putt, you know? Like, Scheffler controlled the field. Like, it was never in doubt. That was the point. Like,
the thing is, like, what Tiger does when he's rocketing up the leaderboard is that you hear the roar, and that is what puts the pressure on a leader. But McIlroy was doing that yesterday. Like, you could hear it when television coverage was covering Smith and Scheffler. You could hear a massive roar from elsewhere in the course, and he knew exactly where it was coming from, because there was only one other person in that collection of golfers chasing down the top two who would get that sort of roar. Like, I saw Wright Thompson making the point that actually there were open spaces on the ropes around Scheffler's final round yesterday, which are usually 5 or 6 deep, that there wasn't such a coronation to this whole thing as you would have had with Tiger in 2019, for example. That actually the mood was all around McIlroy. He was the story yesterday, and people wanted him to do it.
Yeah.
So he doesn't have the Tiger level of presence, absolutely not. Nobody's saying that, but he does still have that presence, and what he did yesterday, I'm sure, did factor into the mind of Scheffler a little bit. But he started playing conservative. He started making very intelligent shots, Scheffler, and that's what won him the competition.
All right.
Will we move on to something else?
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's move on to Robert Balakoon and his couple of tries for Ulster at the weekend. I'm not sure, what did you make of the first of the two legs? Like, I think from an Irish perspective, it was, I think we're looking back indeed saying that was a pretty fun weekend, and everybody's excited for a weekend too.
Yeah, it's a weird. I guess next week we'll know exactly how well or otherwise it worked. It seems to have worked very well in most of the games. There's very few blowouts. Leicester went to Claremont and absolutely ran up a score, so you would expect Claremont won't pick their strongest team for next week, although I don't know. But other than that, like, is the Leinster game over? Because Leinster have an advantage heading into that. Maybe not. Maybe they have been prone to complacency at this stage of the European competition in the past. Connacht played really, really well. Was the yellow card a red card? I don't know. Andy Friend didn't seem to be putting any pressure on loads of other people who are maybe free to speak more openly about one of their colleagues are saying that it should have been a red card for Gibson Park. The commentary certainly seemed to think it was a red card at that stage. From an Ulster perspective, like, they nearly lost the game at the very end, and I do wonder if Toulouse had just kicked a penalty when they got the ball back down into the 22 and had brought the game back some more, or do Toulouse just think, well, we'll have 15 men for the whole game, so we're going to kill you? What's the big deal here? I don't know.
Yeah, and like I think that maybe if these were one-legged ties, there could have been a few different score lines, but it makes you watch, and it makes you very, very interested in what's going to happen next week, because we won't know the answers to a few of those questions until next week. Pascal Jacob has been in touch to say, Red just tuned in, whoever was okay to jerseys for Connacht Leinster, bottom of the performance rankings. Couldn't agree more with that. It was an absolutely terrible colour clash. And
the blue and the green, what's the issue? You're colourblind, are you?
It must be. You thought there was no problem with that.
I guess one of them could have worn white, i.e. Leinster, right?
Yeah, that could.
It's good that these teams, because they never play each other and they never get to see this. You know, it's like I guess what's new. It's so rare that Leinster would play Connacht in the sports grounds that they would under lights that they wouldn't have had an opportunity to spot this before.
Yeah,
we've never had a test run for it.
No, obviously when you talk about like the Toulouse situation, and maybe you mentioned the controversy around the yellow card on Friday night, on Saturday night, there seems to be, like, it seems like Toulouse, I think Dupont actually said after the game, like, it shouldn't have been a red card, which is like just an astonishing comment. Obviously there's a siege mentality aspect to it and backing up his teammate, but like, I think Wayne Barnes had to be escorted off the pitch in Toulouse at the weekend. Obviously there was the added element of Balakoon allegedly being offside for his intercept try, his hat-trick. He wasn't. He was onside, and Barnes got both of those decisions totally correct. So, like, Toulouse are, like, in a pretty bad loser's spot after what happened at the weekend, and that'll probably just make them angry next week, and they'll probably be at their swashbuckling best. But, like, I think Ulster deserve a huge amount of credit for what they did and how they managed to utilise the extra man. And Balakoon is just absolutely incredible. Like, it did feel that He was a little bit out of sight, out of mind during the Six Nations. Obviously, it was a good Six Nations for Ireland. They won the Triple Crown. They only lost one game. Mac Hansen was brilliant. James Lowe was brilliant. Hugo Keenan was excellent. So it's very, very hard to have made a case that Robert Balakoon should have been more involved in the starting team for Ireland over the course of the Six Nations. But you look at what he did on Saturday against such a good team, and granted they were a man down, but you're like, you'd love to see a bit of that. You'd love to see that thrown in against the All Blacks in the summer and just see what happens. It's a very, very competitive position now, the back three for Ireland, which they're in a great position with at the moment.
Yeah, and all like relatively young players. Like Mac Hansen, 23. I think Balakoon's actually older than him, but you know, it's we are well stocked at the position of wing. Hansen was really good as well on Friday night, I thought. So, but Balakoon, like, that's one of those dream scenarios. They just need to back it up. We've seen these performances from Ulster before where there's an inconsistency, but they just need to back it up now, and that would be a massive, massive leap forward.
Yeah, it certainly would. The other element, obviously, from the weekend was Munster, which we'll touch on with Alan Quinlan a little bit later on, but they will be absolutely delighted with how things turned out on the scoreboard on Saturday, I suspect. Just the amount of errors, the way they just completely lost the battle of the breakdown in the first half on Saturday was pretty surprising. I'm not sure I think Munster fans will be pretty excited by the prospect of Graham Rowntree taking over as head coach after seeing his outrage at half-time on the BT Sport cameras in the dressing room. He certainly wasn't letting the Munster team off the leash for that first half performance. And it came out a little bit better in the second half. Exeter probably will rue the fact that they didn't put more on Munster, especially with a couple of opportunities they had in that first half. So they come away from that, and I think that Munster will actually be deep down one of the big winners from the weekend.
Guess the spreads, right? Very quickly.
Munster for a single game.
Yeah, for the single game.
I would say Munster -3.
I've got -5. Munster -5.
Ulster +10.
Ulster +1.
+1, yeah. +10 is a bit harsh. They're at home.
What? But it's Toulouse.
Yeah, it is Toulouse. They're sensational, but like this.
An angry Toulouse.
Yeah. I'm not like maybe somewhere in the middle of there, and then Leinster minus. Let's go -10 on Leinster.
-24.
Oh wow! Okay, wow. That is on Andy Friend's dressing room wall this morning.
It should be. We ain't getting no respect. You're going to put some respect on our name.
Yeah, that's
take my rugby team's name out of your mouth.
Obviously, a few years ago, it was Ulster who came to the Aviva and almost beat Leinster in one of those one-off games in the Champions Cup. So it can be done. They can get again. Leinster did win that night, so it didn't matter. But they can get rattles at home in Europe. It's not beyond the bounds possibility. And Connacht will probably have a bit of confidence from what happened on Friday night as well.
Rory's the full forward in junior club football who scores 3 class points when his team are being hammered 5-16 to 1-5 and there's 7 minutes left, says Brian Dillon. This is a variation on a theme that a lot of people were tweeting us last night. I don't think it's the same. I think that Rory McIlroy was the best golfer in the world for a long period of time. He set the standard. That's why, as you were saying, there was that move behind him and people wanted to see him come back. So it's like it'd be like the Dubs. You know, he was at Dublin's level of dominance. Maybe not Dublin's level of dominance. He was more like that Tipperary team. Clearly the best team in the country for a couple of seasons.
Yeah, and maybe
surrounded, bookended by greatness, right?
Could I just? Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
No, well, I'm just saying that, that bit where this is all. That's not all he's done. He was the best golfer in the world. He has beaten the big fields. He has trounced them in the majors. And he nearly did it at one time, except that he found a part of the course that nobody knew existed, and that caused him to have a meltdown. He finished 15th.
It does feel that criticism of McIlroy might have been, conjured up in people's minds at the turn last night, and then that comment could have been sent in at that point, and everybody had kind of formed their opinion on McIlroy in that front nine, being like, okay, look at him doing this again when the pressure's not on him. But then in that back nine, he kept it up, and he puts up a historic figure on a final day at Augusta. So that changes it a little bit. I think it's not just about him delivering when there was little pressure on him yesterday. It was the fact that he put up a crazy score at Augusta National, which obviously has given him one of his most painful memories in the past. But look, John Duggan tipped him last week. 6 out of the last 10, so what's that? 7 out of the last 11 times he's finished in the top 10 at Augusta. It's a pretty good record.
Yeah.
We finally move on this morning to the last person in our performance rankings, and that is Vicki Wall of Meath. Not player of the match yesterday for Meath as they won their first ever Division 1 National League title, but I think she was head and shoulders the best player on the park yesterday. It was Niamh McLaughlin of Donegal, by the way, who scored a penalty, absolute scorcher of a penalty. She got the player of the match yesterday, but Wall's influence was just incredible throughout the match. She's not the same player at all, but it feels like her fingerprints on the team are quite akin to Ciarán Kilkenny's fingerprints on the great Dublin team, given that, you know, you wouldn't necessarily see him tearing it up on the scoreboard, but when you watch the game, you're like, okay, that person is absolutely integral to how this team plays. And Wall is that person for me. Like, I would not be surprised whatsoever if Eamon Murray has completely ripped up the old cliche of let the ball do the work and actually just said to his team, let Vicki Wall do the work, because she is that good. It actually is just as effective giving her the ball and letting her tear through the defence as it is kicking the ball into an attacker in a one-on-one position. And what it does is that they've got some brilliant other attackers around her, especially in those two forward lines. And you've got like Niamh O'Sullivan, who scored an incredible goal early in the second half. Anybody who didn't see it, she was off balance, kind of reverse, kicked it into the opposite corner. She was kind of moving away to the left, and then, as I say, on the reverse, kind of put it into the right corner. And then Kelsey Nesbitt scored 1-1 as well. Emma Duggan with a couple of points. And when you got those forwards around you, and you're tearing through the defence, and the defence is like, oh God, what do we do now? You've got those players with extra yards of space, and without her, I don't think Meath would have won the game yesterday. That's not exactly a hot take, because Donegal were really good. They only lost by 2 points, and they're a proper side as well. It's going to be a really, really exciting championship after looking at it yesterday. And there was a picture put up afterwards of Wall and Eamon Murray celebrating together, and she quote tweeted it saying, still friends. Of course, Eamon Murray slagged off the sport that she's going to go play this year.
Maybe.
But Murray did say that she's not going to go at any point this season. If she's going to go, she'll have to wait till after the All-Ireland Championship is complete. It looks like they might go all the way again this year.
Yeah, well, certainly, and it's going to be a nice little bit of spice to the game against the Dubs later on in the championship. This is the Gillette Labs performance rankings. If you want to get involved, we'd love to hear from you. The best place to do that is on the Instagram feed. There's a box there. You can tell us who you think should be in the red, the amber or the green. A lot of you giving out about the fact we haven't talked about the Liverpool-Manchester City game just yet. We're going to do a full 25 minutes on it now with Mark Lawrence, and so don't worry, we understand that it was an excellent game of high quality, and it would certainly have been in the green, and we could easily put both teams in the amber because we're not quite sure what the result means for the title race, but we are going to give that its full due deference in just a couple of minutes time. If you want to get in touch with us this morning, 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number, or you can of course leave a comment on the YouTube stream. But that is this week's Gillette Labs performance rankings.
OTB AM's performance rankings with Gillette.